The sky was gray that morning. The wind was cold and sharp, carrying the smell of rain. Inside the small prison on the edge of the town, a man named Rafi sat quietly in his cell. His hands were rough and his eyes looked tired, but there was something gentle in them. He had been there for 2 years, waiting for his final day. Everyone in the prison knew him as the man who never shouted, never complained, and never caused trouble. Rafi had once been a mechanic in a small village. He used to fix motorbikes and old cars for people. He lived alone except for his dog, a brown street dog named Buzo. Rafi had found Buzo as a small injured puppy near his workshop. He had taken the puppy home, cleaned its wounds, and fed it. From that day, Buzo followed him everywhere. The people in the village used to laugh and say, "Rafi and his shadow." Buzo was more than just a pet. It waited for Rafi outside the shop every day, wagging its tail when it saw him. When Rafi worked late, Buzo would sit under the bench quietly. When Rafi went to the market, Buzo would walk beside him, sometimes running ahead to chase a butterfly or sniff the air. It was a simple life, but Rafi was happy with it. Then one night, everything changed. A man was found hurt near the market. People said they had seen Rafi near that place before the fight happened. Nobody listened when he said he was not involved. The police came and took him away. His workshop was closed and Buzo was left alone. The days in prison were long and silent. Rafi often sat by the small window in his cell thinking about Buzo. He wondered if the dog was still waiting outside the old workshop. Every night before sleeping, he whispered softly, "Buzo, my boy, I miss you." Sometimes he dreamed of the day when he would return home and see Buzo running toward him again. The guards liked Rafi because he was quiet and polite. One of them, an older man named Karim, sometimes talked to him while giving food. Karim would ask, "Do you need anything, Rafi?" And Rafi would always say, "No, thank you." But one morning when Karim saw him looking sad, he asked again, "You think about your home?" Rafi nodded slowly. "Not home," he said softly. "I think about my dog." Karim smiled kindly. "A dog? What was his name?" "Buzo," Rafi said. "He was my only family." Karim's smile faded when he remembered that Rafi's time was almost over. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and left quietly. Days passed until one afternoon the warden came to Rafi's cell. He looked serious. "Rafi," he said, "the papers have come. It will happen in 3 days." Rafi didn't move. He only looked down and said in a calm voice, "I understand." The warden hesitated, then said, "You have the right to ask for one last wish, anything within reason." Rafi was silent for a long time. The room was so quiet that the sound of rain outside could be heard. Then Rafi said softly, "I want to see Buzo, just once." The warden was surprised. "Your dog?" Rafi nodded. "Yes, that's all I want." The warden left without a promise, thinking it was impossible. It was not easy to bring an animal inside a prison. But when Karim heard about the request, his heart felt heavy. He thought of his own old dog at home and decided to try. That night, after his duty, Karim went to Rafi's village to find Buzo. The road was muddy, and the rain made it hard to walk. When he reached the empty workshop, he found the door locked and the sign broken. He looked around with a flashlight, calling softly, "Buzo, here, boy." For a few minutes, there was only the sound of rain. Then a small bark came from behind a wall. Karim turned and saw a thin brown dog standing there, its tail wagging slowly. Its eyes were bright even in the dark. "Buzo?" Karim said. The dog tilted its head as if recognizing the name. Karim crouched down and stretched out his hand. The dog came closer carefully, sniffed his hand, and then licked it. Karim smiled. "So it's you. You've been waiting, haven't you?" He gave the dog some food and water he had brought with him. The dog ate quickly but kept looking at Karim as if asking about someone. Karim said softly, "I'm here for Rafi. He wants to see you." It was strange, but the dog seemed to understand. It followed Karim to his car and sat quietly during the drive. When they reached the prison the next morning, the guards were surprised. Some laughed, saying, "We've never had a dog visitor before." But Karim spoke seriously with the warden, explaining Rafi's wish. The warden finally agreed, saying, "All right, let him see the dog for a few minutes. No harm in that." When Rafi heard that Buzo was here, he stood up for the first time in days. His heart beat fast. He felt both joy and pain. He was brought to the courtyard under the gray sky. There on the wet ground, Buzo was waiting. At first the dog looked confused. Then its nose twitched and it began to whine softly. In the next moment it ran forward, barking happily. Rafi knelt down, tears filling his eyes. Buzo jumped into his arms, licking his face again and again. The guards who watched the scene were silent. Some even looked away, their eyes moist. Rafi held Buzo tightly. "My boy," he whispered. "You waited for me." The dog's tail wagged fast. It licked his hands as if trying to say it missed him too. Rafi smiled for the first time in years. For a few minutes it was as if the walls, the guards, and the cold air did not exist. Only a man and his dog together again. When it was time to take Buzo back, Rafi did not resist. He only looked into the dog's eyes and said quietly, "Be free now. Don't wait for me anymore." But Buzo whined loudly, refusing to move. The guards had to pull it gently away. It kept looking back, barking again and again. That night, Rafi couldn't sleep. He sat near the window looking out at the moonlight. He remembered every day he had spent with Buzo. He whispered, "Thank you for coming, my friend. You gave me peace." But in the corner of the courtyard where the dog had been left for the night, Buzo was not sleeping either. It lay down with its head on its paws, looking toward the cell block, as if it knew something was wrong. Its eyes stayed open, full of sadness and loyalty. Nobody knew what the dog would do next, but in its small heart, something strong was building. A feeling that would soon change everything. The next morning came with a soft sunrise that painted the prison walls in pale gold. The guards moved quietly through the halls. No one spoke much. Everyone knew that Rafi's last day was close. The air felt heavy with silence. Inside his small cell, Rafi sat on the wooden bench with calm eyes. He had accepted his fate, but his thoughts were far away. He was thinking about Buzo. Karim brought Rafi his breakfast. He looked at him kindly and said, "You saw your dog. I hope you feel some peace now." Rafi smiled faintly. "Yes," he said. He looked thin, but he still remembered me. Karim nodded. "He didn't want to leave you yesterday. We had to pull him back." Rafi looked down. "He is loyal. He doesn't understand these walls or the rules. He only knows love." Karim felt a lump in his throat. He placed the plate on the table and said softly, "If there's anything more you need, tell me." Rafi shook his head. "No, thank you. You've done enough." Karim walked out, but his mind was not at peace. He kept thinking about that brown dog, the way it refused to go. He had seen many prisoners in his life, but he had never seen such quiet kindness in a man, or such deep loyalty in an animal. Meanwhile, Buzo was kept in a small open yard near the back gate. Karim had arranged it with the warden so the dog could stay one more night before being sent away. The warden had agreed, saying, "All right, but it must be gone by tomorrow." Buzo sat there all day looking toward the building where Rafi was. When someone tried to bring it food, it only sniffed it and turned away. It barked softly sometimes, then lay down again. The guards who passed by shook their heads and said, "That dog has more loyalty than many humans." When night came, the sky turned dark and full of clouds. The wind blew harder. Inside the cell, Rafi could not sleep. He thought of the life he had lived. He remembered the day he found Buzo, the small puppy shivering in the rain. He remembered feeding it, naming it, teaching it to stay close. He remembered how Buzo used to run around the workshop, chasing his own tail while Rafi laughed. Those were happy days, he whispered to himself. "I never hurt anyone. I only tried to live simple. Maybe fate wanted this for me." He closed his eyes and prayed for peace, not for himself, but for Buzo. Outside, near the gate, Buzo began to whine. The guards on duty noticed it and tried to calm it down, but the dog kept pacing in circles. Its ears were up, its eyes sharp. It could sense something strange in the air. After some time, when the guards turned to check another corner, Buzo slipped quietly into the shadows. It moved fast, almost invisible in the dark. It had spent 2 years waiting and had learned how to survive. It knew how to hide and how to move silently. Following the smell it knew best, it found the way to the main building. The dog's paws made no sound on the wet ground. It passed through a half-open door and crept along the empty corridor. Inside, Rafi sat near the window, half asleep. He thought he heard a faint scratching sound. At first he ignored it, thinking it was just the wind. But then he heard a soft whine. His eyes opened wide. He stood and went close to the iron bars. "Buzo?" he whispered. A soft bark answered from the darkness. Rafi's heart began to beat fast. He knelt by the bars and saw 2 glowing eyes and a wagging tail. He could not believe it. "Buzo, how did you get here?" he said softly. The dog whined louder and pushed its nose between the bars. Rafi smiled through tears. "You crazy boy, you came back again." He reached out his hand and Buzo licked his fingers. For a few moments, all the fear, sadness, and pain disappeared. It felt like time had stopped. Rafi whispered, "You shouldn't have come here, my friend. They will take you away again." But Buzo didn't move. It kept staring at him as if saying it would not leave him again. Kareem, walking back from his late duty, heard the soft barking and followed the sound. When he reached the cell, he froze in surprise. "Buzo, how in the world did you get inside?" he whispered. Rafi looked at him with an apologetic smile. "He found me," Kareem sighed. "He must have slipped through the gate. If the warden finds out, I'll be in trouble." Rafi shook his head. "Please let him stay for tonight." "Just tonight. He won't cause harm." Kareem looked at the man and the dog. He saw the silent bond between them and could not say no. He nodded. "All right, but only for a few hours. I'll close this corridor so no one comes here." He left quietly, and Rafi sat down with Buzo lying beside the bars. He told the dog stories about their old days. "Do you remember the old market? You used to bark at the goats and scare them away," he said with a small laugh. The dog tilted its head and wagged its tail, as if remembering. Rafi spoke for hours, his voice calm and full of love. When he grew tired, he lay down on the floor near the bars. Buzo stayed close, resting its head on its paws. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Thunder rolled across the sky and lightning flashed through the windows. But inside that cell there was peace. For the first time in many years, Rafi felt safe. When Kareem returned in the early morning, he found them still together. He stood silently for a moment. He didn't want to break the moment, but he had to. "Rafi," he said softly, "it's morning. We need to move him before others see." Rafi sat up slowly. His eyes were tired but peaceful. "Thank you, Kareem, for letting him stay." Kareem nodded and opened the door carefully. Buzo jumped up and wagged its tail, ready to follow Rafi. But Kareem said, "No, Buzo can't come there." The dog looked confused and began to whine. Rafi knelt and held its face in his hands. "Buzo, listen. You have to stay here. I can't take you with me, but I'll always be with you here," he said, placing his hand over his heart. Buzo barked softly as if trying to say no. Kareem's eyes filled with tears. "He understands more than words," he whispered. 2 other guards came and called Rafi's name. It was time. Rafi stood up straight. He looked one last time at Buzo and said, "Be free, my friend. You were the best part of my life." As they walked away, Buzo barked again and again, louder each time. Its cries echoed through the corridor. Every guard who heard it felt something in their chest tighten. When Rafi disappeared through the doors, Buzo began to run around, barking wildly. It scratched at the gate and pushed against the lock. It didn't care about rules or walls. All it knew was that its master was gone. Kareem tried to calm it, but Buzo slipped past him again and ran toward the main yard. The dog was fast, determined, and desperate. No one could stop it easily. What the dog did next would surprise everyone and change everything they believed about loyalty, courage, and love. The morning sky was still gray when Rafi was taken to a small hall inside the prison. The air was quiet and every step echoed on the floor. The guards walked slowly, their faces serious. Kareem was among them. His heart was heavy. He had known many prisoners before, but none like Rafi. Rafi walked calmly. He did not cry or ask for mercy. His face was peaceful, as if he had already made peace with everything. When they reached the end of the corridor, Kareem whispered softly, "I will take care of Buzo." Rafi smiled faintly and said, "Thank you, my friend." Outside, near the back gate, Buzo waited restlessly. The dog had broken free again, slipping through a loose fence. It had run all the way to the courtyard. The guards tried to catch it, but it moved too fast. It barked loudly, its eyes wide with worry. One guard shouted, "Catch that dog." But Buzo ran around them, dodging every hand that tried to grab it. It was small, but it was strong and smart. When Rafi heard the barking, he stopped. His heart recognized that sound. He turned his head and said softly, "Buzo." Kareem looked toward the courtyard window. "It's him again," he said. "He won't stay away." The warden frowned. "That dog has caused enough trouble. Get it out of here." But before the guards could move, Buzo jumped onto a wooden crate near the window. Its front paws reached the edge, and it barked again, looking for Raffi. The moment their eyes met, time seemed to stop. Raffi smiled sadly. He came again. He doesn't understand what's happening. Kareem felt a deep pain in his chest. He said quietly, "Maybe he understands more than we think." The warden sighed. "Let him stay there for a few minutes," he said. "Then take him away." Raffi nodded in thanks. He looked at Buzo through the window and said softly, "Good boy. Don't cry. You gave me everything I needed." Buzo kept barking and wagging his tail. It pressed its nose against the bars, whining softly. But then something unexpected happened. As the guards moved forward, one of them tripped over a loose chair and a bunch of papers fell from his hand. Kareem bent to help, and in that small moment, Buzo jumped down and ran through an open door that led to the hall. The guards shouted, "Stop that dog!" Before anyone could stop it, Buzo dashed straight toward Raffi. The sound of claws on the floor echoed through the room. Everyone froze in surprise. The dog ran past the guards and stopped right in front of Raffi, its eyes full of love and fear. Raffi knelt down quickly, tears filling his eyes. He hugged Buzo tightly. "You silly boy, why did you come?" he whispered. The dog licked his face again and again, its tail moving fast. The guards stood still, unsure what to do. Even the warden did not speak for a moment. The sight was too powerful, too full of emotion. Kareem finally stepped forward. "Sir, maybe we can wait a little," he said quietly to the warden. "Just give them a few minutes." The warden hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. That's all." So Raffi sat down on the floor holding his dog. He whispered softly, telling Buzo about their old life, the small workshop and the quiet evenings. He told him about the sunset walks and how Buzo used to sleep near his feet. The dog listened as if it understood every word. Everyone in the hall watched silently. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the air felt still. Some guards looked down, hiding their tears. After a while, Kareem walked forward and said softly, "Raffi, we have to continue." Raffi nodded slowly. He looked into Buzo's eyes and said, "My friend, it's time to say goodbye." But Buzo didn't move. It stayed close, pressing its head against Raffi's hand. Raffi tried again, his voice gentle. "Go now, Buzo. Live free. Don't wait for me anymore." Still, the dog didn't leave. It began to bark loudly, almost like it was arguing. Then it turned and stood between Raffi and the guards, growling softly. It was trying to protect him. The warden spoke firmly. "Take the dog out before it bites someone." Kareem stepped forward slowly. "Easy, Buzo," he said. "Come with me." But Buzo refused to move. It stood there, its fur raised, its eyes bright with tears. Everyone could see that it was scared but brave. Raffi said softly, "Listen to me, Buzo. Go with Kareem, please." The dog turned to look at him one last time. Then slowly it walked toward Kareem, tail low, head down. It stopped at the door and looked back again. Raffi gave a small nod and the dog finally went out. The hall fell silent again. Raffi closed his eyes, whispering a small prayer for his loyal friend. Outside, Kareem took Buzo back to the yard. He tied the leash softly and sat beside it. The dog whined, trying to pull free. Kareem said, "You have to stay here, boy. I know you don't understand, but this is how it has to be." Buzo looked at the door and barked again. It could feel something was wrong. The barking grew louder, echoing through the prison yard. Even prisoners in other cells heard it and stood near their windows. One of them whispered, "That dog is crying for the man inside." Inside the hall, everyone could hear the barking too. Raffi smiled sadly. "He never gives up," he said softly. Kareem looked at the warden. "Sir, please, can I take the dog away now? It will calm him down." The warden nodded. "Do it quietly." Kareem took Buzo in his arms and carried it outside through the back gate. The dog struggled, barking and twisting, trying to go back. Kareem's heart broke. He placed it near his car and whispered, "I'll take you far from here, boy. You can live free." But when he opened the car door, Buzo jumped out and ran back toward the prison. It moved fast like lightning, ignoring Kareem's calls. It ran past the guards and straight to the courtyard again. The guards tried to block it, but the dog squeezed through the smallest gap and reached the door. Inside, something unexpected happened. The warden received a message from the police station in Raffi's old village. A young man had confessed to the crime that Raffi was blamed for 2 years ago. The truth had come too late. The man told the officers he had fought with someone else that night, not Raffi. The real story was out. The warden froze. His hands trembled as he read the message. "Stop everything," he shouted. "He's innocent." Kareem, who had just returned from the yard, heard the shout and ran inside. "What did you say, sir?" The warden held up the paper. "He didn't do it. They found the real man." Before Kareem could answer, Buzo pushed through the door again, barking loudly. The sound echoed through the hall like a signal. Rafi looked up in surprise. Kareem rushed to him, holding the paper in his hand. "Rafi, you're free. They found the truth. You are innocent." Rafi blinked, unable to believe it. "What?" Kareem smiled, tears in his eyes. "You are free, my friend." Buzo barked again and ran toward Rafi, jumping into his arms. The guards clapped, and even the warden smiled. The hall that had been full of sorrow now filled with joy. Rafi hugged Buzo tightly. "You did it, my boy." "You never gave up on me," he whispered. Everyone watched the scene with emotion. No one spoke. The bond between a man and his dog had brought hope to a place of despair. As Rafi stepped out of the hall with Buzo beside him, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. The sky was clear and the wind felt warm. It was the start of a new life, but the story was not over yet. Something greater was waiting for them outside the prison walls. The prison gates opened slowly, making a rusty sound that echoed across the courtyard. Rafi stepped outside for the first time in 2 years. The sunlight touched his face and he blinked at its brightness. Beside him, Buzo walked proudly with his tail high, as if he knew he had won a great battle. The guards watched silently while Kareem stood near the gate, smiling with tears in his eyes. "Free at last," Kareem said softly. Rafi turned to him. "You believed me when no one else did." "I will never forget that." Kareem shook his head. "It wasn't me who saved you. It was that loyal friend beside you." Rafi looked down at Buzo and smiled. Yes, he never stopped believing. They shook hands and Kareem said, "Go home, Rafi, start again. The world outside is waiting for you." Rafi nodded, thanked the warden, and began walking down the dusty road. Buzo trotted beside him, glancing at his face from time to time as if checking that everything was real. For a long time they walked in silence. Birds sang in the distance, and the wind carried the smell of wet soil after the rain. When they reached the edge of their old village, Rafi stopped. His eyes filled with memories. The narrow streets, the small shops, and the sound of children playing brought back his old life. But something had changed. People who once doubted him now looked at him with guilt and surprise. Some whispered, "That's Rafi, the man who was innocent." Others said softly, "The dog saved him." An old man came forward. It was the village head. He said in a low voice, "Rafi, we all heard the news. The police came and told us the truth. We are sorry." Rafi looked at him calmly. "I don't blame anyone," he said. "Sometimes truth takes time to reach where it belongs." The man nodded, shame in his eyes. "If you need anything, we will help you." Rafi thanked him but asked for nothing. He only wanted peace. He walked to his old workshop, which stood quiet and dusty. The windows were broken and the signboard was half faded. He pushed the door open and a wave of old memories rushed in. Inside, tools lay scattered on the floor. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Buzo sniffed around, wagging its tail happily. It ran to the corner where its old blanket used to be and barked softly. Rafi smiled and said, "You still remember your place." He spent the rest of the day cleaning. He swept the floor, fixed the broken table, and gathered his old tools. Neighbors watched from a distance, unsure if they should approach. But one young boy finally came and said, "Uncle Rafi, can you fix my bicycle?" Rafi smiled. "Bring it here. Let me see." By evening, the workshop looked alive again. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. Rafi worked with his hands while Buzo lay near the door, guarding him just like before. People began to come, bringing small repairs and saying kind words. As night fell, Rafi sat outside under the stars. He looked at Buzo and said softly, "We are home, my friend. You gave me back my life." Buzo wagged its tail and rested its head on Rafi's knee. The quiet of the night felt peaceful. For the first time in years, Rafi slept without fear. Days turned into weeks and the workshop became busy again. People from nearby villages came to see the man whose dog had saved him. Some came to get their vehicles repaired, others just to meet them. They would smile and say, "This dog is a hero." Rafi would laugh and answer, "He's just my friend." One afternoon, a journalist came from the city. He said he wanted to write an article about the story. He took pictures of Rafi and Buzo, asking, How did the dog manage to help you? Rafi smiled gently. He didn't do it with words or proof.
He did it by never giving up on me.
His faith made others look again at the truth. The article was published with the title, "The Dog That Waited for Justice." It spread across towns and cities. People were touched by the story of a man and his loyal dog. Letters of support came from far away. Someone even sent money to help Rafi rebuild his shop. But Rafi never wanted much. He only used what he needed and saved the rest for others. Life became peaceful, but one morning something unexpected happened again. A man came to the workshop looking nervous. Rafi recognized him immediately. It was the same man who had confessed to the police, the real criminal. Rafi stood quietly, waiting for him to speak. The man looked down and said, "I came to say sorry. I was scared that night and blamed you. I can never forgive myself." Rafi's eyes were calm. "You have already confessed. The truth has been spoken. That is enough." The man looked surprised. "You don't hate me?" Rafi shook his head. "Hate only brings more pain. I have found peace, and I wish the same for you." The man wiped his eyes and said, "You are a good man. I hope your life brings you happiness." He left quietly. Buzo barked once, watching him go. Rafi patted its head. "It's over now," he said softly. That night, Rafi sat by the small fire outside the workshop. The stars shone brightly and the village was quiet. Buzo lay beside him, its eyes half closed. Rafi said, "We have a new beginning. Tomorrow we will fix more bikes, maybe even build something new." Buzo barked softly as if agreeing. The next morning, Rafi decided to do something special. He took a wooden board and painted words on it. The sign read, "Buzo and Rafi Workshop, for those who believe in loyalty." He placed it above the door. People passing by smiled and took pictures of it. Time passed and their bond grew stronger. Buzo became a local hero. Children brought it food and visitors often took photos. But no matter how famous it became, Buzo never changed. It stayed close to Rafi, watching over him every single day. One evening, when the sun was setting and the air was cool, Rafi looked at the horizon and said quietly, "I think we've done well, my friend. Life has given us a second chance." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper Karim had given him when he left the prison. It had Karim's address on it. Rafi smiled and said, "Tomorrow we will visit Karim. He deserves to see us happy." The next day, Rafi and Buzo set out early in the morning. They walked along the long road that led to the city. The sun shone bright and the air smelled fresh. Travelers on the road waved at them, some calling out, "That's the man from the newspaper." Rafi smiled and waved back. Buzo trotted beside him happily. After a few hours, they reached Karim's small house near the city park. Karim was sitting outside drinking tea. When he saw them, he stood up quickly, smiling wide. "Rafi," he said joyfully, "you really came." Rafi laughed. "You helped me when I had nothing. I had to show you how well life is treating us." Karim looked down at Buzo and said, "And you, brave one, you did what no human could." He bent down to pat its head, and Buzo wagged its tail proudly. They spent the whole day together talking about the past, the prison, and the strange turn of fate. As the sun began to set, Karim said, "I always believed that kindness finds its way back." "You are proof of that," Rafi smiled. "And Buzo is proof that love never gives up." That night, they sat together by the small fire outside Karim's home. The moon rose high and the world felt calm. Rafi looked at his old friend and his loyal dog and felt a deep peace in his heart. He whispered, "I had lost everything, but love found me again." Buzo lifted its head and placed its paw gently on Rafi's leg, as if saying, "Well, we are home now." And for the first time in years, Rafi truly believed it. The morning sun rose slowly over the prison yard. Its light fell on the gray walls and the tall metal gate that stood like a silent guard. Inside the cell, Arif sat on his small bed, his eyes fixed on the window bars. He had barely slept the whole night. Every second that passed reminded him that this day was his last. But strangely, his heart was calm. He knew he had made peace with himself. He whispered to himself that he had seen Rusty again, and that alone was enough. The memory of Rusty running to him, wagging his tail and licking his hands, stayed in his heart like a bright flame in darkness. For the first time in years, he felt hope. As the guards came to take him out, Arif stood up quietly. He did not resist. His chains rattled softly as they walked him down the long corridor. The sound echoed against the walls like a slow drum. Some guards looked at him with pity, others with respect. They had seen many men go through this path, but none had walked so calmly. When they reached the courtyard, a voice stopped them. It was the old warden. He held a letter in his hand and looked confused. He said something had happened outside, something strange. A small group of people had gathered near the prison gates. Among them was a man from the village who had come running, breathless and holding papers. The warden took the papers and began reading quickly. Then his eyes widened. He turned to Arif, his face pale. The papers were proof that Arif had been innocent all along. The real man behind the crime had confessed before dying in an accident the night before. The signed confession and the evidence had reached the village head, who immediately sent them to the city. The documents arrived just in time. The warden stood silent for a moment, then slowly looked up at Arif. His voice shook when he said that Arif was free. The guards looked at each other in disbelief. Arif closed his eyes, unable to speak. His knees trembled. He could not believe it. He whispered a small prayer under his breath. He felt tears on his cheeks but did not wipe them. After so many years, his name was finally cleared. The warden ordered his chains to be removed. The heavy metal fell to the ground with a dull sound. For the first time, Arif's hands were free. He rubbed his wrists and smiled faintly. The guard stepped back, letting him walk out into the open air. Outside, the world looked different. The sky seemed wider, the wind cooler, the sound of birds sharper. He looked around and saw Rusty standing a few meters away, tail wagging and eyes bright. The dog had come again. Rusty barked once, as if he already knew. He ran to Arif and jumped, almost knocking him down. Arif laughed softly and hugged him tightly. The dog licked his face and hands, circling him in joy. People around smiled and clapped. It was a sight they would never forget. The warden came out after some time and handed Arif the release papers. He also gave him a small envelope. Inside it was a note from the warden himself, saying that this was the first time in his career he had seen a miracle. He wished Arif a peaceful life ahead. Arif thanked him quietly and then looked at Rusty. The dog was still wagging his tail, as if saying they should go home. Together they began walking down the dusty road outside the prison. The crowd followed for a while but soon turned back. As they walked, Arif kept thinking about the strange chain of events. He wondered if it was luck, fate, or something divine that had saved him. But deep inside, he felt Rusty had played a part in it. The dog had always been there when he needed him most. Maybe seeing Rusty had changed something inside him and inside others too. When they reached the village, people came out of their houses to see him. Some had thought he would never return. They were shocked to see him walking freely beside Rusty. Many gathered around, asking questions, some apologizing, some just staring in silence. The old village head came forward and put a hand on Arif's shoulder. He said that the truth had finally won, and that everyone owed him an apology. Arif nodded but said he held no anger toward anyone. He only wanted peace and a simple life. In the next few weeks, Arif started living in a small hut on the edge of the village. Rusty stayed with him, never leaving his side. Together they planted vegetables, fixed the fence, and repaired the old house. The villagers often came to visit, bringing food and helping with small tasks. Slowly, Arif became part of the community again. But one thing stayed with him always. Every morning when he looked at Rusty, he remembered that day in the prison. He remembered the promise he made in his heart, that if he ever got another chance at life, he would live kindly and never let bitterness grow inside him. One evening, months later, as the sun was setting, Arif sat outside his hut with Rusty lying beside him. The sky was painted in shades of orange and red. The air was quiet except for the sound of crickets. He looked down at Rusty and smiled. He said softly that the dog had saved him in more ways than one. Rusty looked up as if understanding every word. Then the dog rested his head on Arif's leg and closed his eyes. Years passed. Arif grew older, and Rusty too. They shared countless days of peace and small joys. The villagers loved them both and often told new children the story of how a loyal dog had changed a man's fate. When Arif finally passed away in his sleep one calm night, Rusty was there beside him. The villagers buried Arif near a big tree by the river, and Rusty stayed there quietly, watching over the grave every day. Rusty lived for 2 more years, and then one morning, he too was found lying peacefully under the same tree. The villagers buried him beside Arif. They built a small stone marker between them and wrote simple words on it. Here rest two loyal hearts who never gave up on each other. Even after many years, people from nearby villages came to see that place. Some brought flowers, others just stood quietly and prayed. The story of Arif and Rusty became a legend of loyalty, hope, and forgiveness. And whenever the wind blew softly through the trees by the river, the villagers said it sounded like a dog's gentle bark, reminding everyone that true friendship never dies.